Bradley Hamilton was, by all outward appearances, a man who had it all. At 60 years old, his name had become practically synonymous with wealth, philanthropy, and impeccable social responsibility. He owned a vast ranch in the wide-open countryside, complete with acres of rolling hills and stables that housed purebred horses. He held seats on the boards of some of the most powerful corporations in America, from tech giants in Silicon Valley to energy firms in Texas. And to anyone looking from the outside in, Bradley was every bit the charitable billionaire who was always ready to make a generous donation to the latest cause. Despite this illustrious reputation and the myriad successes he'd collected over decades of hard work, there was a gnawing emptiness inside him. The older he got, the more persistent that hollow feeling became. Like a faint hum he couldn't quite place. He lived in luxury, yet felt increasingly disconnected from the world outside the tall windows of his penthouse in Manhattan and the rolling pastures of his secluded ranch. His days were packed with business meetings, philanthropic galas, and charity auctions. He went from one initiative to the next without ever pausing long enough to figure out why he was doing any of it. Bradley had never been married. In fact, he'd spent very little time even contemplating marriage. No children, at least none he had acknowledged, ever entered into his carefully organized orbit. Relationships came and went, short-lived affairs, fleeting connections. He found solace, or perhaps distraction, in his work. It was easier to be absorbed in the never-ending responsibilities that accompanied his fortune. Over the years, however, a little voice in his mind began to question what his endless accomplishments truly meant if he had no one to share them with. Everything changed one breezy October afternoon. The air in Manhattan was crisp, hovering around 55 degrees Fahrenheit, a sure sign that fall had staked its claim on the city. Bradley had just wrapped up a high-stakes negotiation at the headquarters of his main investment firm. Instead of calling for his driver, he chose to walk a few blocks. Manhattan's bustling energy usually offered him a rare kind of solace, despite the throngs of people he passed. After strolling about 3 city blocks, Bradley noticed a young man, barely more than a boy, sitting cross-legged on the sidewalk. The teen held a battered cardboard sign that read, "Please help, hungry and homeless." His clothes were disheveled, his sneakers worn to the sole, and his eyes had the weary look of someone who had spent many nights trying to find a safe place to sleep. Yet there was something else, something about the teen's face that made Bradley halt, a feeling so strong it seemed to stop time for a moment. Those eyes, they were the same shade of hazel as Bradley's own, the same sharp outline he saw in the mirror every morning when he shaved. The shape of the young man's jaw, the subtle crease in his chin, Bradley felt an uneasy familiarity that sent a chill up his spine. The teen, who couldn't have been more than 19, looked up, meeting Bradley's gaze. A moment passed that felt far longer than a regular glance between strangers on the street. The connection was instantaneous and jarring, as if they both recognized something in each other that had been hidden until that very second. "Can I help you with something?" the teen asked, his voice laced with guarded caution. Bradley shook himself from his daze. "Oh, sorry," he managed. "I didn't mean to stare." "It's fine," the teen responded, shrugging. His sign crinkled against the sidewalk as he shifted, though his expression remained suspicious, as if he half expected Bradley to walk off or scold him for loitering. Bradley couldn't walk away, and he couldn't quite explain why. Something deep and instinctive wouldn't allow him to ignore this kid. "What's your name?" he finally asked softly. The young man eyed him warily. "Jaden," he said. "Jaden Carter." "Jaden," Bradley repeated, the name echoing in his mind. "How long have you been living on the streets?" Jaden exhaled. "A couple of months now. I've been trying to find work, but it's not easy. I'm just another black kid with no connections, no safety net. Seems like nobody cares." Bradley's stomach knotted. He had funded programs for youth shelters and community centers, had written generous checks to help homeless teens, yet here was one, right in front of him, and he was realizing how disconnected he'd been from the people he supposedly helped. "What about your family?" Bradley asked, his voice low. Jaden's eyes hardened, and his shoulders rose as if preparing for a blow. "I don't really have any. My mom died last year. She was all I had, and since then, I've been on my own." The weight of the teen's story pressed into Bradley's chest. Suddenly, all his multi-million-dollar deals and lavish galas felt small and empty. He sensed a startling responsibility, like the universe had flung open a door he hadn't realized was there. Bradley knew he couldn't just walk away. "Do you have a place to stay tonight?" he asked. Jaden shook his head. "I usually find a shelter or a place under an overhang somewhere if the shelters are full. I manage." A swirl of thoughts churned in Bradley's mind. He had an extra bedroom in his penthouse that he almost never used. He had more resources than an entire city block's worth of people combined. The urge to help Jaden overwhelmed him. "Come with me," Bradley said, the words leaving his mouth before he had time to question them. Jaden immediately stiffened, suspicion flaring in his eyes. "Why?" "Because," Bradley replied, trying to keep his voice steady, "I have a place nearby. You can shower, get something to eat, rest for a night, then we'll figure out what comes next." Jaden hesitated, glancing at his surroundings. The endless rush of city life, the impersonal footsteps of people who hurried by without a second glance. "How do I know I can trust you?" he asked, his tone blunt. "You don't," Bradley admitted. "But I promise, I don't want anything from you. I just want to help. No strings attached." For a long moment Jaden studied him, clearly wrestling with fear and the urgent need for warmth and safety. Finally, he gave a nearly imperceptible nod. "All right," he said, picking up his sign and tucking it under his arm. "Just for tonight." Bradley felt an odd mix of relief and apprehension. He waved down a yellow taxi, and soon they were headed uptown in tense silence. Bradley glanced over at Jaden, who stared out the window, watching the neon signs and pedestrians blur past. The ride took only a few minutes, but it felt like an hour. When they arrived at Bradley's penthouse, a sprawling top-floor residence in a sleek high-rise, the doorman tipped his cap, trying hard not to stare at Jaden's rumpled clothes. Inside the elevator, Bradley punched in his private security code, and the doors glided open onto his polished foyer. "Holy!" Jaden's eyes widened, the marble floors and panoramic view of the city lighting up his face with a mix of awe and intimidation. "This is where you live?" Bradley nodded, strangely self-conscious. "Yeah, I have another place out in the country, but I stay here most of the time." Jaden was silent, taking it all in. The gleaming granite countertops in the open-concept kitchen, the vaulted ceilings with subtle recessed lighting, and the windows that offered an unobstructed view of the Hudson River, stretching for miles under the autumn sky. Bradley gave Jaden a set of fresh clothes and pointed him to the guest bathroom. While Jaden showered, Bradley tried to piece together the turmoil in his own heart. What was this intense feeling that made him reach out so impulsively? Yes, he was philanthropic, but this was different, personal. He found himself tracing the lines of his own face in the hallway mirror, recalling that moment on the sidewalk when he locked eyes with Jaden. When Jaden emerged, wearing an old sweater and jeans that belonged to Bradley, the resemblance seemed even more apparent. The teen's hair was neatly trimmed, but clearly in need of professional care, and his face bore a faint scar above his right eyebrow that gave him a world-weary look. Yet those hazel eyes gleamed with the same determined spark that Bradley often saw in the mirror. They ordered a simple dinner, burgers and fries from a neighborhood spot that offered takeout, and Jaden ate like he hadn't seen food in days. Bradley observed him quietly, noticing every detail. The way Jaden tapped his knee nervously, how he avoided eye contact unless spoken to, and the guarded tone in his voice, as though any moment he expected to be asked to leave. Over the next 2 days, Bradley arranged a hotel room for Jayden, unwilling to push the teen too far. Too fast by insisting he stay in the penthouse. He also gave him some money for essentials, warm clothes, toiletries, and a phone to stay in touch. But a nagging suspicion kept building in Bradley's mind, refusing to let him go about his business as usual. The resemblance was undeniable, but it wasn't just the physical features. It was the intangible sense that they were connected in some profound way. Bradley found himself obsessively revisiting his younger days, times before he'd come into his fortune, back when he was still in his late 20s and hustling in various real estate investments. He recalled a short-lived fling with a woman he met during a conference in Chicago. Could that woman have been Jayden's mother? Unable to concentrate on his board meetings or philanthropic endeavors, Bradley invited Jayden back to the penthouse. He took a deep breath, feeling a rare flutter of nerves in his stomach. "I have a strange favor to ask," Bradley said once they were seated in the living room, facing the expansive windows. "I'd like us to take a DNA test." Jayden nearly dropped the soda can he was holding. His eyes flickered with alarm. "A DNA test? For what?" Bradley forced himself to meet Jayden's gaze. I think there's a chance we might be related. I can't shake the feeling. I know it sounds unbelievable, but that's why I need to be sure." Jayden set his soda can down on the coffee table, a harsh laugh escaping his lips. "You think you're my uncle or something? My cousin?" Bradley's heart thudded. This was the hardest conversation he'd ever had. "No," he said quietly. "I think I might be your father." Silence. It was as though all the air had been sucked out of the penthouse. Jayden looked as if he'd been struck. "My father?" he repeated, voice cracking. "Years ago," Bradley began haltingly, "I had a relationship, brief but intense. We didn't stay in contact, and, well, I never knew if we had a child, and the way you look, the timing, it all lines up too well." Jayden sank back against the couch. He looked at Bradley like he was seeing a ghost. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice trembling with equal parts anger and confusion, he said, "You're serious? You think you're my dad? And it took you 19 years to even show up?" Bradley winced. He couldn't blame Jayden's reaction. "I swear I didn't know. If I had known..." Jayden cut him off. "If you'd known, you'd what? Step in and save the day? My mom worked 2 jobs until she couldn't anymore. She got sick and we couldn't afford the hospital bills. She died, Mr. Hamilton. And where were you?" Bradley's throat felt impossibly tight. He had no defense. All he could offer was an apology that sounded flimsy, even to his own ears. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I can't change what happened, but I want to do something now. Will you take the test with me?" Jayden stared at him. Sadness, anger, longing, and disbelief warred in his eyes. Finally, he nodded. "Fine, let's see the truth." The days waiting for the DNA results were some of the longest in Bradley's life. He couldn't focus on anything else. Numbers blurred during board presentations. Polite conversations at charity dinners felt like hollow echoes. Each night, he'd stare out over the New York skyline, questioning the choices that led him to this moment. He felt a deep-seated guilt that, for once, no amount of charitable giving could erase. When the test results arrived, Bradley could barely open the email. His hands trembled as he clicked through. The truth flashed before him in stark black and white. Jayden Carter was his biological son. The room seemed to tilt. Bradley sank into his chair, reading and rereading the results. All the successes he'd stacked up, his philanthropic ventures, his real estate empire, his name plastered in the media, none of it could balance out the weight of having abandoned a child he never even knew existed. He called Jayden, voice shaking as he asked him to come over. They sat in the living room, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing a sky painted with streaks of pink and orange from the setting sun. Bradley spoke first, barely above a whisper. "We have the results. It's confirmed. I'm your father." Jaden's eyes flickered as though he knew the result all along, but hearing the confirmation still hit him like a freight train. He nodded once, his lips pressed into a tight line. So, what now? Bradley's eyes misted. I don't know. I wish I could turn back the clock, but I can't. I just know I want to help, to be in your life, if you'll let me. Jaden's face hardened. Help how? You think throwing money at this is going to fix everything? Bradley swallowed a lump in his throat. No, I don't. That's not what I mean. I want to be the father I should have been. I want to support your dreams, whatever they are. For a while, Jaden said nothing, his focus on a decorative bowl perched on the glass coffee table. The tension in the air was almost palpable. I don't even know what to say to you, or how to feel. Jaden said at last, I spent my entire life without a dad. My mom never told me your name, never showed me a picture. I used to wonder, but after a while I figured it didn't matter, especially not after she died. Bradley felt tears welling up, a mixture of remorse and compassion. Your mom? I never knew she was pregnant. I didn't even think about the possibility. That's on me. And I know it doesn't make things better, but I'm sorry, Jaden. I'm so sorry. Jaden's fists clenched and unclenched against his thighs. It's been so hard, you know. I'm not some charity case. I'm just a person who got a bad deal. And now you want to step in because we share DNA? Bradley's voice was hoarse. It's more than just sharing DNA. It's about doing what's right. I can't change the past, but I can be here for you now. I can offer you a place to stay, a chance to go to college, a future that doesn't involve cardboard signs on the street. Jaden let out a long breath, his shoulders gradually relaxing. I get it, but it's going to take a while for me to trust this, to trust you. I can't just pretend everything's fine now. Bradley nodded. I understand. We can go at your pace. In the following weeks, they began the precarious process of building a relationship. Bradley helped Jaden secure a studio apartment not too far from his penthouse, offering to cover the rent for a set period while Jaden found more stable work or chose to enroll in classes. At first, Jaden was reluctant, worried he'd be seen as a leech, but Bradley emphasized that this was about giving him a safe place to sleep, something every 19-year-old deserved. Bradley also connected Jaden with a career counselor he knew through one of his charitable foundations. It wasn't about handing Jaden a life on a silver platter. It was about offering him the resources he'd been missing. Over coffee in a small diner one morning, Jaden opened up. Sometimes I think about all the what-ifs. What if I'd grown up with you around? Would things have been different for my mom? Would she be alive today? His gaze was distant, haunted. Bradley looked down, stirring his black coffee absently with a spoon. I ask myself that every day now, he admitted. I lie awake at night, wondering how many different roads our lives could have taken if I'd just known, if I'd just been more attentive in my youth. I can't ever make up for that. They fell into a reflective silence before Jaden spoke again, voice quiet. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still angry, but maybe it's worth seeing where this goes. Bradley managed a small, hopeful smile. I'd like that. It wasn't a simple, tidy reconciliation. There were moments when Jaden's frustration exploded, like when he saw Bradley's extravagant penthouse or the luxury cars he rarely drove but kept parked in a private garage. This is so unfair, Jaden muttered on one of those visits, looking at the framed art on the walls. All this money, and I was bouncing between run-down apartments and homeless shelters. Bradley could only nod, grappling with a guilt so profound it felt like a permanent knot in his chest. He'd started as a modest real estate agent with big dreams. He'd worked hard, yes, but he'd also had opportunities that Jaden never did. In quiet moments, he donated even more heavily to homeless outreach programs, feeling it was the least he could do, though he knew no charitable act would erase Jaden's pain or bring back the mother he lost. Gradually, father and son found ways to connect, they discovered a shared love of music, especially jazz. When Jaden admitted he played guitar in high school, Bradley surprised him with front-row tickets to a jazz festival in Central Park. They spent the afternoon soaking in the rhythms, Jaden nodding along, his defenses lowering bit by bit. Afterward, they talked for hours about life, about regrets, and about the future. Bradley saw a brightness in Jaden that reminded him of the ambition he once had at 19. Jaden spoke about wanting to develop skills in digital marketing or maybe going to college to learn business, but he hesitated to commit. "I don't want to fail or waste an opportunity," Jaden admitted. "You won't be doing it alone," Bradley said firmly. "That's what being a parent is for. Maybe I'm late, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Though the path was anything but smooth, both of them began to realize that family isn't always about how things start, but how you choose to move forward. Together, they tackled the painful memories, the resentments, and the uncertainty of the future. Bradley introduced Jaden to trusted friends who could mentor him in various careers. And Jaden, in turn, challenged Bradley to step outside the insulated world of high society fundraisers and see the raw truths on the streets. Little by little, they bridged the gulf between them. Bradley discovered that true fulfillment came not from the accolades he'd stacked up or the fortune he'd amassed, but from forging real human connections, especially with his own son. For Jaden, the realization that he didn't have to fight every battle alone anymore was both empowering and terrifying. Acceptance, however, was a slow process. He didn't want pity. He wanted understanding. Some days, he rejected Bradley's attempts at closeness. Other days, he sought it out, calling Bradley to share something small, like a moment of victory at a job interview or a new guitar riff he'd learned. In time, they stood together on the balcony of Bradley's penthouse, looking out over the city Jaden once roamed in desperation. The skyscrapers glowed in the twilight, and there was,